You are conscious right now. You know that you exist. You know that time is passing. You want something, and you lack something else. And somewhere in you, maybe barely noticed, maybe quietly insistent, is a question you may never have put into words. Why is any of this happening? What am I exactly? Why am I here? What would it mean for my life to have actually mattered? These questions aren't decorative. They press on every serious human life, sooner or later. Philosophy exists because they cannot be permanently suppressed. Madhva, the 13th century philosopher saint who founded what we call Dvaita Vedanta, offered answers to all of them. Not vague answers. Not comfortable reassurances. Clear, precise, logically rigorous answers. Answers that form a single unified system, where every piece requires every other piece, and every fundamental question a conscious being can raise gets a direct and honest response. You are a real individual soul, not a dream, not a fragment of God, awaiting dissolution, but a genuinely distinct conscious being. The world you inhabit is genuinely real. The suffering in it is genuinely serious. The being who governs it is genuinely personal, genuinely good, and genuinely knowable. And the liberation available to you is not the extinction of everything you are. It is the complete and permanent fulfillment of the deepest thing you have always been. That's the claim. Let's see why Madhva thinks it's true. Before we go any further, I want to clear away 5 things you may have heard about Dvaita Vedanta that are simply wrong. Each one has a respectable sounding source. Each one is wrong, and holding any one of them will prevent you from seeing what Madhva actually built. First myth: Advaita is the more advanced or subtle teaching. Dvaita is for those who haven't gotten there yet. This is probably the most widespread misunderstanding in all of Indian philosophy, and it's the precise inversion of the truth. Advaita and Dvaita are not steps on the same ladder. They are competing readings of the same texts, making mutually incompatible claims. Madhva's direct argument is that the Advaitic reading is not more subtle. It is a misreading, one that systematically inverts what the texts actually say. Dvaita is a stepping stone to Advaita, is not a neutral observation. It's already a verdict, and one that doesn't survive serious engagement. Second myth: Dvaita is fatalistic. Your destiny is decided, so effort is pointless. The doctrine of inherent differences between souls does not mean nothing you do matters. Your inherent type is fixed, but what you do with your life is genuinely yours. Effort is not the mechanical cause of liberation, but it is the natural activity of a soul oriented toward Vishnu. And it is typically the condition under which Vishnu's grace operates. The gardener doesn't control what the seed is, but the gardener's care is still what enables the seed to become what it's capable of becoming. Third myth: why Vishnu specifically? Isn't this just sectarian preference? Madhva's case is not sectarian. It's textual. He argues that the being described in the Upanishads and Brahma Sutras as the cause of everything, the inner controller of all souls and matter, the one beyond whom nothing stands. The texts name and describe this being with attributes that are consistently those of Vishnu, also called Narayana. The identification isn't imposed on the texts from outside. Madhva argues it's what the texts actually say when you read them without the prior assumption that all names refer to the same featureless absolute. You can disagree, but that's just Vaishnavism, is not a philosophical response. Fourth myth: Madhva was primarily a polemicist. He spent his energy attacking Shankara. He wrote 37 texts, every major scriptural source in the tradition, a complete epistemological framework, a systematic ontology, a detailed account of the devotional path. The refutations of rival positions are rigorous philosophical arguments. The system he built is one of the most complete and internally consistent in Indian philosophical history. The polemics are visible because they're sharp. The construction they serve is larger. Fifth myth: all Hindu philosophies ultimately say the same thing. The details differ, but the destination is the same. Madhva argues the opposite, and argues it with precision. Either you are ultimately identical to Brahman, or you are part of Brahman's body, or you are a genuinely distinct individual soul. These cannot all be true. Either the world is ultimately unreal, or it constitutes Brahman, or it is genuinely independently real. Either liberation dissolves the individual, or it fulfills the individual. These are different answers to the same questions, And when answers are incompatible, they cannot all be correct. Now, before the details, let me give you the complete story in one reading. You are a real individual soul, not a dream, not a fragment of God, not an error awaiting correction. You've existed since before time as you experience it, passing through countless lives, accumulating karma and experience. You're in samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, because a covering called avidya, a specific form of ignorance, prevents you from seeing your own true nature. Karma, generated by every intention and action, keeps this covering in place and shapes the circumstances of each life. You can't exhaust this karma on your own. The very acts of exhausting it generate fresh karma. And no amount of effort, however sincere, compels liberation. What you can do is clean the mirror. That image, the mirror, is going to be the thread running through this entire video. Hold it. Vishnu is the light. You are the mirror. Avidya and karma are the dust. Sadhana, spiritual practice, is the cleaning. The light is not withheld from you. It has never been withheld. What differs between souls is not how much light they receive. It's what they're capable of becoming in its presence. The path is bhakti grounded in jnana, genuine love for Vishnu rooted in genuine understanding of who he is, who you are, and what the relationship between you actually involves. The destination is Vaikuntha, a real realm, graded like everything else in this system, where you, still yourself and more fully yourself than you've ever been, exist in Vishnu's eternal presence at exactly the closeness your own nature is capable of. Knowing him directly, loved by him truly, blissful and individual, forever. The seeking ends not in obliteration. It ends in arrival. If you want to understand Madhva, start with an idea that most modern intuitions find deeply uncomfortable. You are not, in any ultimate sense, self-sufficient. At the absolute foundation of his entire system stands one irreducible claim. Vishnu alone is Sarvatama, the highest of all, superior to everything that exists. This isn't a devotional preference. It's not a cultural inheritance. It is, in Madhva's view, the logically necessary conclusion of any rigorous analysis of what it means for something to be genuinely, ultimately real. Think about what genuine independence actually requires. A being is truly independent only if its existence doesn't require anything outside itself, if its knowledge isn't derived from any external source, if its action isn't constrained by any external force, and if its nature can't be altered by any external power. Vishnu alone meets all of these conditions simultaneously. He knows all things by his own nature, not by being informed. He acts by his own will, not by being moved. He exists by his own essence, not by being caused. The technical term Madhva uses for this is Svantantra, fully self-dependent. And by logical contrast, everything other than Vishnu is Paratantra, dependent on another for its very being and function. Individual souls are conscious, but they don't possess knowledge independently. Matter is real, but it can't organize itself into a cosmos without Vishnu's direction. Even the great gods, Brahma, Shiva, Indra, are souls of a higher order who depend entirely on Vishnu for their existence and their powers. Here's the image Madhva uses, a lamp and a mirror. The lamp originates its own light. The mirror only shines because a lamp exists elsewhere. You can fill a room with mirrors and flood it with brightness, but trace any of that brightness back to its source, and you arrive at the lamp that no other lamp lit. Every conscious being in the universe shines with awareness, but that awareness is reflected, borrowed, sustained by the one consciousness that originates its own light. Vishnu is the lamp. Everything else is a mirror. One of Madhva's most emphatic points, and one that matters for everything that follows. Vishnu is not an abstraction, not a featureless consciousness behind appearances, not a void into which all distinctions dissolve. Vishnu is a person. He has a real, eternal, spiritual form. He has real attributes: omniscience, omnipotence, perfect bliss, perfect beauty, perfect goodness. These are not limiting conditions imposed on an unlimited absolute. They are the eternal, real, positive characteristics of the highest being. When the Upanishads and Puranas describe Vishnu's form and qualities, Madhva insists they are speaking literally, not metaphorically. The personal God of devotion and the ultimate reality of philosophy are one and the same being. A word about Lakshmi, because her role in this system is philosophically significant and frequently misunderstood. Vishnu is never alone. His eternal consort, Lakshmi, also called Sri or Mahalakshmi, occupies a category entirely her own. Above all jivas, never bound by samsara, never subject to liberation in the sense that souls must be liberated, because she has never been in bondage. She is not a jiva who ascended to the highest rank. She is a being of a distinct order, eternally free, eternally in Vishnu's presence, dependent on him and never separate from him, yet genuinely distinct from him as a conscious being in her own right. Her role in Madhva's system: she is the primary mediator between Vishnu and all other beings, the one through whose intercession Vishnu's grace most naturally flows to souls seeking liberation. She is the philosophical link between Vishnu's absolute independence and the absolute dependence of all other conscious beings. Now let me show you something about those three schools of philosophy, the ones reading the same texts and arriving at completely incompatible conclusions. Madhva says the explanation is not in the texts. The texts are the same light source. What differs is the mirror through which each interpreter receives and returns that light. The school that dissolves the personal God into featureless impersonal consciousness, that declares individual souls identical with Brahman and the world an illusion, is reading as a concave mirror reads, returning the precise inversion of what's actually there. Where the texts affirm a supreme personal being, it sees impersonality. Where they affirm genuine individual souls, it sees identity. Where they affirm a real world, it sees illusion. Every affirmation, reversed. The school that holds souls and matter to be real, but to constitute Brahman's body, inseparably part of him, is reading as a convex mirror reads. The image is right side up, recognizably there, but the proportions are distorted. The genuine distinctness of souls is compressed into partial identity. The reading that takes the text's affirmations at face value, Vishnu's personal supremacy, the soul's genuine individuality, the world's genuine reality, that is what a flat mirror returns. The divergence of schools is therefore not merely a philosophical dispute resolvable by better arguments alone. It reflects the curvature of the interpreters. If the mirror determines how a person receives the light of Vishnu, it also determines how they receive everything Vishnu makes, including the world itself. And here the flat mirror and the concave mirror part ways most sharply of all. One of the most influential doctrines in Indian philosophical history is Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahman is real, the world is false. The world of our experience, with its objects, persons, relations, events, is ultimately unreal. A superimposition of names and forms on the one featureless Brahman, like a dream that appears vivid while you're in it, but dissolves on waking. Madhva rejected this strenuously throughout his entire body of work. The world is not mithya in any metaphysically serious sense. It is genuinely, independently, permanently real, dependent on Vishnu for its existence and continuation, yes, but real in exactly the same sense that Vishnu's existence is real. The material substrate of the world, Prakriti, is beginningless. No temporal moment exists before which it didn't exist. But its beginninglessness is the dependent, contingent beginninglessness of a real created substrate, not the absolute eternity of Vishnu. It unfolds under Vishnu's direction into the entire manifest universe. Now here's a key distinction. One influential account of creation says, Vivartavada, apparent transformation. The absolute projects the appearance of a world through Maya, without any real change occurring in the underlying reality. On this view, creation isn't genuine making. It's superimposition, like a rope appearing as a snake in dim light. Madhva rejected this entirely. He accepted Parinamavada, real transformation. Prakriti genuinely undergoes real changes under Vishnu's direction to produce a real world. Here's the part that's easy to miss. Projecting an appearance requires less power than creating a reality. A magician produces illusions precisely because he can't produce the real thing. A world that exists only as a superimposition. Dissolving the moment correct understanding arises, would actually be testimony to a limitation in the Creator. Vishnu, in Madhva's understanding, is the most capable being conceivable. The world he makes is therefore genuinely real, genuinely new, genuinely independent. The permanence, the diversity, the independent existence of the world are not qualifications on Vishnu's greatness. They are its clearest expression. Why does this matter practically? Let me be direct. If the world is ultimately unreal, then the suffering of other people is ultimately unreal. The injustices of social life are ultimately unreal. The moral demand to relieve suffering and oppose injustice is ultimately groundless. Madhva saw this clearly. Any doctrine of the world's unreality, taken seriously, undermines the ethical and devotional life at its foundations. If the world is real, other souls are real. Their suffering is real. Your actions toward them have real consequences. The moral life has genuine and permanent weight. This isn't a metaphysical technicality. It's the foundation for everything that makes ethical seriousness possible. A real world requires something else to be equally real. The beings who live in it, suffer in it, act in it, and ask what it all means. Which brings the question back to you. In Madhva's philosophy, you are a jiva, an individual conscious soul that is real, genuinely individual, and genuinely eternal. You were not created at the moment of your physical birth. You will not cease to exist at the moment of your physical death. You've been a conscious being since before time as you experience it, passing through countless forms and lives. Your individuality is not a temporary mask worn by an underlying universal consciousness. You are irreducibly, permanently, and distinctively yourself, and this is not a limitation. It's a feature of the deepest structure of reality. The jiva is essentially consciousness. That's what distinguishes it from matter. Matter is entirely non-conscious, incapable of any experience whatsoever. The soul is essentially experiential. It knows, it feels, it desires, it acts. But the jiva's consciousness is not self-sufficient. It is not the source of its own awareness. Its capacity for knowledge depends entirely on the light of Vishnu's consciousness illuminating it. Think of the mirror. The mirror can reflect light, but it cannot produce light. The jiva can be conscious, but its consciousness is a reflection of Vishnu's absolute consciousness. Without Vishnu's sustaining supply of awareness, the jiva's consciousness would reduce to nothing. And yet, even in the deepest dreamless sleep, something persists. You wake knowing that you slept. That would be impossible if you'd been completely unconscious during it. The Sakshi, the inner witness, registers even the absence of waking experience. That minimal residual awareness is Vishnu's continuing supply, never fully withdrawn. Now let's go deeper into the mirror. Madhva uses the technical term bimba pratibimba, original and reflection, to describe the relationship between Vishnu and the jiva. Vishnu is the bimba, the original. The jiva is the pratibimba, the reflection. A reflection genuinely resembles the original, but it is not the original. And confusing it with the original is a fundamental error. Think of the moon reflected in a still pond at night. The reflection is genuinely there. Same disk, same soft light, seemingly the same moon. But when wind disturbs the water, the reflection fractures and ripples while the moon above remains completely unmoved. The reflection depends on the pond being still, the sky being clear, the angle being right, while the moon itself depends on none of these. Now, how clearly the moon is reflected depends on how clean the surface is. A mirror caked thick with dust swallows the light and gives almost nothing back. A mirror lightly filmed over returns it dimly, grayed. A surface scoured clean reflects with astonishing fidelity. The soul is the mirror. Avidya, karma, and tamas are the dust. Sadhana is the cleaning. This is why spiritual practice is not about acquiring something new from outside. It's about removing what obscures. The light is already there. Vishnu's presence is never withdrawn. What changes through practice is the quality of the soul's surface, its capacity to receive and reflect that presence without distortion. And this reframes the hardest question in Dvaita. Why does God give more to some souls and less to others? That's the wrong question. It assumes the problem lies with the light. The light is identical everywhere. Vishnu's presence isn't rationed. What differs is the mirror. Taratamya is not a statement about how much Vishnu gives. It's a statement about what each soul, by its own deepest nature, is capable of becoming in his presence. Now, here's the dimension of the mirror analogy that maps onto the deepest structure of souls. Not all mirrors are flat. A concave mirror, curved inward, produces an inverted image. Top becomes bottom. The orientation of the original is entirely reversed. What is being reflected is Vishnu, whose essential nature is Ananda, eternal bliss. The concave mirror doesn't merely fail to reflect this. It inverts it precisely. The exact opposite of eternal bliss is eternal sorrow. A convex mirror, curved outward, produces a distorted image. The proportions are wrong. Only a flat mirror produces a faithful image, true in both orientation and proportion. Here's the key distinction. Dust speaks to avidya, what accumulates, what obscures, what sadhana can remove. Curvature speaks to svabhava, the inherent shape of the soul itself, prior to any accumulation and independent of it entirely. Sadhana removes the dust. It cannot change the curvature. A concave mirror perfectly polished still inverts. A convex mirror perfectly clean still distorts. The three eternal categories of souls are these three types of mirror. Not 3 degrees of dustiness. 3 fundamentally different geometries of being. We've now met the 3 fundamental realities in Madhva's system: Vishnu, the world, and the soul. What remains is to see exactly how they relate to one another, because the way Madhva draws these boundaries and insists they never blur is one of his most distinctive and demanding contributions. If Vishnu is the one genuinely independent reality and everything else is dependent, what precisely is the relationship between Vishnu, souls, and matter? Madhva's answer is the doctrine of Panchabheda, the 5 eternal, real, and irreducible differences that structure all of reality. 5 differences. Let me take them in turn. First, the difference between individual soul and God. The jiva is conscious, real, and eternal, but it is not Vishnu and never becomes Vishnu. It is a genuinely distinct being whose consciousness differs in kind from Vishnu's. Partial, dependent, and bounded where Vishnu's is complete, independent, and unlimited. This difference was never created. It will never end. Second, the difference between matter and God. Matter, Prakriti in its various forms, is entirely dependent on Vishnu, but genuinely distinct from him. The chair you sit on, the earth beneath your feet, the food you eat, genuinely real, genuinely distinct from God, and genuinely distinct from your soul. Third, the difference between one soul and another. Every jiva is unique. No 2 souls are metaphysically identical. Each has its own inherent nature, its own capacity for knowledge, its own potential for devotion, its own place in the hierarchy of souls. This difference is not the product of karma alone. It's built into the very constitution of each jiva at the deepest level. Fourth, the difference between soul and matter. Souls are conscious. Matter is not. This is a categorical difference, not a quantitative one. No amount of organized matter produces consciousness. The soul inhabits the body but is not produced by the body and does not perish when the body perishes. Fifth, the difference between one piece of matter and another. Different objects in the world are genuinely different from each other, not merely different appearances of one underlying substance. A stone is genuinely different from water. Fire is genuinely different from air. The diversity of the world is real diversity. The most radical thing Madhva insists about these 5 differences: they're permanent. There is no philosophical move, no spiritual practice, no state of knowledge, including the highest state of liberation, in which these differences dissolve. They're not like the apparent difference between a rope and a snake, which vanishes when you bring a lamp. They're real features of a real world, willed and maintained by the most real being. Wisdom doesn't make them disappear. Wisdom makes you see them correctly, as real, as meaningful, as the very structure through which your relationship with Vishnu is lived and deepened. One of those 5 differences, the difference between one soul and another, carries more weight than the rest and deserves its own extended treatment. It's the difference that generates Madhva's most demanding and most misunderstood doctrine. Madhva's doctrine of Taratamya, the graded hierarchy of all souls, is one of the most distinctive and philosophically challenging aspects of his system. It runs against the grain of traditions that insist all souls are ultimately equal. Madhva insists the differences between souls are real, significant, permanent, and hierarchical, rooted not in circumstance but in the inherent nature of each soul as constituted by Vishnu from the beginning. The most fundamental division: 3 eternal categories. Mukti Yogyas, souls whose inherent nature orients them toward liberation. In the mirror analogy, flat mirrors. Their curvature is true. What stands between them and the faithful image is only what has settled on the surface, grit and grime accumulated over lifetimes. And grit, unlike glass, can be scoured away. Nitya Samsarins, souls bound to endless transmigration. They cycle through birth and death indefinitely, experiencing the ordinary mixture of pleasure and pain, without ever reaching liberation or final darkness. In the mirror analogy, convex mirrors. The image is there, not inverted, not absent, but the glass itself bulges, and the proportions come back warped no matter how hard you polish. No amount of cleaning straightens a curve baked into the surface itself. Tamo Yogyas, souls destined for eternal darkness. Their ultimate destination is andatamas, permanent exclusion from divine light. In the mirror analogy, concave mirrors. The glass caves inward, and it doesn't just blur the image, it flips it. And the inversion is exact. Vishnu's essential nature is ananda, eternal bliss. The concave mirror doesn't merely fail to reflect this. It returns eternal sorrow, the precise logical opposite of what the original is. Andatamas is not a punishment externally imposed. It is what a surface that constitutively inverts everything produces when eternal bliss falls on it. Now the obvious objection. If souls are created with different inherent capacities and destinies, how is Vishnu just? The answer begins with a clarification of what justice actually means. Equal treatment of unequals is not equality, it is appeasement. Genuine equality is equal treatment of equals and unequal treatment of unequals. Consider a gardener who waters every plant with equal care, the same water, sunlight, soil. A mango seed becomes a mango tree. A mustard seed becomes a mustard plant. The gardener hasn't failed the mustard by not making it a mango. Each seed unfolds its own nature under identical conditions. And could the gardener override the seed's nature? Technically, you could destroy the seed and substitute another, but that is not the same seed producing a different fruit. It's the elimination of one being and the substitution of another. There's a second dimension that cuts even deeper. If Vishnu could simply override a Tamo Yogya soul's nature and redirect it toward liberation, the same logic applies to every soul, including the Mukti Yogya. If natures are overridable at will, then the goodness of a genuinely good soul is not truly its own. The devotion of the greatest bhakta becomes contingent, arbitrary, a quality imposed from outside rather than expressed from within. Taratamya, far from dishonoring souls of lesser capacity, is the very doctrine that makes the virtue of souls of greater capacity genuinely their own. But press the objection one step further. The kind of fairness we just described, equal treatment of equals, unequal treatment of unequals, is the fairness scarcity demands. A gardener has only so much water, so much land, so much time. Vishnu has no such constraint. He is not rationing anything. So why not simply make every soul perfectly good from the outset? Here is why that request, taken seriously, asks for something incoherent. Start with what good even means. Someone may be called good only if they could have chosen wrong and chose right instead. A stone isn't good because it never steals. A stone was never capable of stealing in the first place. It had no choice, so it gets no credit. Force a good outcome, so it's guaranteed, and you haven't created virtue. You've created a mechanism. That's true no matter how powerful the one doing the forcing is. Now, an obvious reply. Fine, forced goodness is empty, but why not simply make every soul what Vishnu himself is? Vishnu's goodness isn't forced on him, and nobody calls it meaningless. Why not give that same thing to everyone? Here's why not. Vishnu's goodness comes from nobody. Nothing made him, so nothing could have made him otherwise. That's what it means to be Svatantra, independent. A soul is not like that. A soul only exists because Vishnu keeps it in existence. That's what it means to be paratantra dependent. Everything about a soul, including its nature, comes from somewhere else. So, give a soul Vishnu's kind of goodness is really asking for one thing to be both dependent and independent at the same time. That isn't a gift being withheld. It's not a real request at all, like asking for a circle with four corners. No amount of power makes that possible, because the words are canceling each other out. So it was never a choice between make everyone a god and give some people freedom instead. Making a soul into a god was never an option to begin with. The real choice was simpler. Either fix every soul's path from the outside and lose virtue and selfhood in the process, or give souls a nature and a freedom that are genuinely their own. Vishnu chose the second. Taratamia is what that choice looks like. That leaves an obvious question hanging. If a soul's nature is fixed at this deep a level, what actually keeps it bound to samsara in the meantime? And what, concretely, would it take to be free? Answering that means clearing up three terms that get routinely confused with one another. Let me address three related concepts: Maya, avidya, and karma, because all three are commonly misunderstood. Maya. In popular understanding, Maya means illusion. This is the Advaitic understanding. Madhva's understanding is entirely different. In Dvaita, Maya is not illusion. Maya is real creative power, Vishnu's own Shakti, his intrinsic creative energy, the positive capacity by which he brings the world into real existence. It is not the error of a misperceiving mind. It is the tool of an omnipotent creator. Avidya. While Maya in Dvaita is not illusion, there is a genuine cognitive error Madhva acknowledges. This is avidya, the specific ignorance that causes souls to misperceive themselves, misperceive Vishnu, and misperceive the true structure of reality. In terms of the mirror, Maya is what shapes the world the mirror stands in, the real material field the soul acts within. It is not what makes the mirror. The soul itself is beginningless, never created, not even by Vishnu. Avidya is the dust. Two entirely different things requiring two entirely different responses. Karma. Every intentional action, physical, verbal, mental, creates a karmic trace that lodges in the causal body of the soul and eventually produces corresponding experiences and circumstances. Karma operates in three modes. Sankita karma, the total accumulated stock of all unexhausted karma from all past lives. Prarabdha karma, the portion drawn out and opened, the active bag whose consumption has begun, not confined to a single lifetime. It runs until its momentum is spent, which may span multiple lives. Agami karma, new karma being created right now through present choices. Now here's Madhva's most distinctive claim about karma. It is impossible for a soul to fully exhaust its karma through its own activity. The very acts of exhausting karma generate new karma. Every intention, every effort, every act of sadhana is itself an act, and acts leave karmic residue. This is not theoretical. Here's the practical test. Animals and plants accumulate no new intentional karma. If karma exhaustion were the mechanism of liberation, they should be the first to be liberated. They are not, because what stands between the soul and liberation is not only new karma, but the existing stock that only Vishnu can erase. Liberation requires Vishnu's direct, active, willing grant of grace, anugraha. No dissolution of karma, however complete, compels Vishnu to grant liberation. Liberation remains Vishnu's sovereign gift. You've now been told quite a lot. Vishnu alone is genuinely independent. Your soul is a real individual, permanently distinct from God. The world is genuinely real. Souls differ inherently in their capacity for liberation. Karma cannot exhaust itself, and only Vishnu's grace can erase it. How do we know any of this is true? This is not a challenge to deflect. It is the most important question you can ask, and Madhva took it more seriously than almost any other Vedantic philosopher. He recognized that all metaphysical claims ultimately rest on claims about the validity of our ways of knowing. If your theory of knowledge is wrong, your entire metaphysical system is built on sand. Madhva recognizes three valid sources of knowledge, the three pramanas. Pratyaksha, direct perception. This gives us genuine acquaintance with the world as it actually is. You directly perceive that you are not the person next to you. You directly perceive that the chair is not you. These perceptions are valid, not illusions requiring correction by superior philosophical insight. Anoumena, inference. From smoke on a distant hill, we infer fire. From designed complexity in the cosmos, we can infer an intelligent designer. But inference has a crucial limit. It can only tell us about entities that stand in observable relationships with things we already know. It cannot, by itself, tell us the inner nature of Vishnu or the conditions of moksha. Shabda, Vedic testimony. For everything that transcends perception and inference, the Vedas, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, Brahmasutras are the authoritative source. Not human compositions whose authority depends on human wisdom. Revelations of Vishnu himself, transmitted through the cosmic medium of Vayu. Because their source is Vishnu's own omniscience, their authority on matters within their scope is absolute. And underlying all three pramanas, the Sakshi, the inner witness consciousness, the aspect of the jiva's consciousness that directly and immediately apprehends the results of all cognitive processes without needing a further act of cognition to validate them. When you perceive a flower, something in your consciousness directly registers the perception as valid. When you feel pain, something directly registers the feeling as real. When you wake from dreamless sleep knowing you slept, it was the Sakshi that witnessed even that absence. This immediate, non-inferential self-validation of experience, that is the Sakshi. So the claims on the table are not free-floating assertions. They rest on perception, inference, scriptural testimony, and the witnessing consciousness that validates all three. But knowing a thing and living it are different acts. The question now is what a soul actually does with knowledge like this, how it turns understanding into a relationship. Madhva's answer is bhakti. Bhakti. In common religious usage, this means devotional feeling, the emotional warmth of love for God expressed through prayer, song, and worship. Madhva doesn't dismiss this, but he insists that bhakti in its genuine form is not primarily a feeling. It is a cognitive state, knowing and loving Vishnu as he actually is. With full awareness of who he is, what your relationship to him actually involves. Here's an analogy. Imagine a person who receives letters every day from someone they've never met, believing the correspondent to be a wise and loving elder. Over years, genuine affection, gratitude, and reverence accumulate. Then they discover the letters were generated by something entirely different from what they imagined. The feeling was real, but the object of the feeling was never correctly known. The relationship, properly speaking, was with a projection, not with the actual being on the other side. This is the structural fragility of bhakti without jnana. Correct knowledge doesn't dampen devotion. It gives it a foundation that holds. Madhva outlines a progression of devotional practice. It begins with sravana, careful listening to and study of authentic teaching. It proceeds through jnana, deep reflection and assimilation of what's been heard. It deepens through nididhyasana, sustained contemplative meditation on Vishnu's qualities and his relationship to the soul. It is nourished by puja, ritual worship, and it is sustained through smarana, continuous remembrance of Vishnu throughout all activities of daily life. What all these stages share is their direction. They are acts of removal rather than acquisition. Vishnu's presence is not absent and waiting to be summoned. It is the ground of all existence, already present, never withdrawn. What sadhana removes is the avidya, the karma, the tamas that obscure the soul's capacity to receive it. The mirror is already there. The work is cleaning. No matter how refined a soul's bhakti becomes, no matter how complete its philosophical understanding, liberation is ultimately Vishnu's gift. The soul cannot produce its own liberation. It can prepare itself, orient itself, make itself a fitting vessel for grace. But the liberation itself is Vishnu's sovereign act of anugraha. This is not a demotion of the soul's effort. It is a recognition of the ultimate asymmetry between the soul's dependence and Vishnu's independence. And it is itself the deepest form of bhakti, the willingness to acknowledge that the final gift is not earned but freely given. But neither grace nor knowledge reaches the soul in a vacuum. Both travel through channels. And Madhva names one specific being who occupies the most important channel of all. Among all created beings, gods, humans, all other conscious entities, one stands at the summit of the hierarchy. Mukhya Prana, the cosmic life force, also known as Vayu. Vayu is not simply the physical wind. He is the primordial conscious life force that pervades and animates the entire universe, the chief among all jivas, possessing the greatest inherent capacity for knowledge and devotion among all souls. Vayu's role is not merely honorific. He serves as the primary cosmic intermediary for the transmission of authentic Vedic knowledge, the bridge through which Vishnu's infinite wisdom becomes accessible to finite souls. All genuine spiritual knowledge that reaches souls reaches them through Vayu's agency. Among Vayu's many functions, one stands out as indispensable: the transmission of knowledge. He is the living conduit through which infinite wisdom becomes receivable by finite minds. Without Vayu's mediation, the gap between Vishnu's omniscience and the bounded understanding of individual souls could not be bridged. Madhva teaches that Vayu incarnates periodically in human form to renew the authentic teaching. In the Treta Yuga, Hanuman, the great devotee of Rama, the embodiment of perfect selfless service. Every action performed purely out of love and devotion, without any trace of ego or desire for personal gain. Hanuman's role in the Ramayana is, in Madhva's reading, the cosmic role of Vayu manifesting in a world that needs a living example of what genuine selfless devotion looks like. In the Dvapara Yuga, Bhima, the second Pandava brother, where Hanuman embodied devotion through service and love, Bhima embodied it through courage, straightforwardness, and the willingness to stand against adharma without compromise or calculation. Bhima's ferocity in battle was the ferocity of one who has understood that protecting dharma is itself an act of worship. And in the Kali Yuga, Madhva himself, he taught that he was the third avatara of Vayu, appearing specifically to re-establish the correct understanding of Vishnu's supremacy and the soul's genuine individuality, at a time when the doctrine of non-dual identity had come to dominate the interpretation of the Vedic texts. This claim deserves direct engagement. There is no honest middle ground on it. Either Madhva is who he says he is, Mukhya Prana's avatara, the cosmic transmitter of authentic wisdom, in which case his interpretation alone is authoritative and the alternatives are not merely philosophically mistaken but cosmically displaced. Or he is not, in which case he either knew his claim was false, making him deliberately deceptive, or he genuinely believed it while being wrong, making him fundamentally deluded about the most basic fact of his own identity. A person who is deceptive or deluded about their own cosmic nature is not a reliable guide to ultimate reality. The common posture of praising Madhva as a great philosopher, one of the three acharyas, while quietly setting aside his claim to be Mukhya Prana avatara, that is not a neutral position. It's an attempt to occupy a middle ground that does not exist. If you accept Madhva as a reliable spiritual authority, you must accept him for what he says he is. If you reject that claim, you've already rejected the foundation on which everything else rests. There is no version of Madhva worth taking seriously that is Madhva with that claim removed. Take Madhva at his word, then, and follow the system to where it has been heading from the very first sentence of this video. What actually happens to a soul that walks this path all the way to its end? Moksha in Madhva's system is complete and permanent freedom. Freedom from the cycle of birth and death, freedom from the covering of avidya, freedom from the constraints of karma, freedom from the suffering that accompanies bondage. But the single most important claim Madhva makes about moksha, the one that most sharply defines what liberation means in Dvaita, is this: liberation does not involve the dissolution of the soul's individuality into an undifferentiated absolute. The liberated soul does not cease to be itself. It does not merge into Brahman and disappear as an individual. It does not realize that it was always already Vishnu and that its apparent individuality was the illusion being dissolved by liberation. The liberated soul remains an individual soul, genuinely distinct from Vishnu, genuinely distinct from other liberated souls, genuinely experiencing its own particular bliss in its own particular mode. Consider two Carnatic vocalists, each trained for decades, each having fully mastered their tradition. When they sing, they do not become the same singer. Each one's voice, phrasing, timing, emotional coloring is entirely their own, and precisely because it is, their music is irreplaceable. Mastery doesn't produce uniformity. It produces the fullest, most completely individual expression of each musician's inherent gifts. The more complete the mastery, the more distinctly themselves they become, not less. Liberation in Dvaita follows the same logic. Each soul in Vishnu's presence arrives at the complete fulfillment of its own individual nature, not absorption into a common pool of undifferentiated bliss, the full and permanent flowering of exactly who that soul has always been. Even in liberation, Taratamia continues. Liberated souls experience different degrees of bliss and different degrees of nearness to Vishnu, in accordance with their inherent capacity, not the amount of effort they exerted, but the nature they came with. Vaikuntha is not a single undifferentiated point where every liberated soul stands equally close. It is graded the way everything in this system is graded, each soul finding its own place at exactly the closeness its own nature is fit to hold. Think of the mirror analogy at its completion. In that realm, every soul has had its dust entirely removed. No avidya remains. No obscuring karma. Each mirror is as clear as its nature allows, receiving Vishnu's light with perfect, unobstructed fidelity. But clarity is not the same as capacity. A smaller mirror perfectly cleaned and a larger mirror perfectly cleaned are both perfectly clear, but they receive different quantities of light. Each soul's bliss in liberation is complete because it is the full and unobstructed reception of Vishnu's presence by a surface that is, at last, exactly what it was always meant to be. Here's the objection this naturally raises. If gradation persists even in Vaikuntha, doesn't that mean liberated souls spend eternity envying those closer to Vishnu than themselves? And the reason why is important. Only souls whose nature is already Mukti Yogya, already oriented toward Vishnu at the deepest level, ever reach Vaikuntha at all. Jealousy is what an ungoverned ego produces when it measures itself against another. But the very thing liberation completes is the soul's freedom from that ego. A soul capable of envying another's closeness to Vishnu is, by definition, not yet a soul capable of being in Vaikuntha. Think of it in terms already familiar to you. A child who genuinely loves a parent does not envy the parent for having more wisdom, more authority, more years lived. The love itself makes the comparison irrelevant. The child delights in the parent being exactly what the parent is. Liberated souls stand in exactly this relationship to Vishnu, and, because their love for him has matured into seeing all things truly, in this relationship to each other as well. Each soul's fullness is not diminished by another soul's greater fullness. It is, if anything, part of what completes the joy. There is a question worth sitting with. If liberation means the apparent individual who sought it was never real to begin with, that the seeker, the seeking, and the path were all ultimately illusory, then who exactly is it that is liberated? The person who spent lifetimes struggling, practicing, longing. That person, on this account, does not reach the destination. There was no person. There was no journey. There was no destination. Something that was always already free simply recognizes that it was always free. Whether this constitutes liberation in any personally meaningful sense is a question Dvaita presses with great force. In Dvaita, by contrast, you, the actual individual soul who has been seeking, genuinely achieves something real. Your journey was real. Your seeking was real. And what you arrive at is the real, permanent, personal fulfillment of everything your nature has always been oriented toward. Let's see the complete structure. Vishnu alone is genuinely independent. Everything else, souls and matter, is real but dependent on him. The world produced by Vishnu's creative Maya is genuinely real, the field in which real souls work out their real karma under Vishnu's real superintendence. Individual souls are genuine individuals with inherent natures that place them in a real hierarchy. The 5 real differences are permanent features of this structure, not appearances to dissolve, but truths to inhabit. Karma generates experience, but only Vishnu's grace produces liberation. Vayu mediates the transmission of authentic knowledge. Valid knowledge is available through the 3 pramanas, with the Vedic texts as supreme authority for what transcends perception and inference. Bhakti, grounded in correct jnana, is the primary practice. And moksha is the real, individual, personal fulfillment of the soul's deepest orientation, existence in Vishnu's eternal presence, blissful and individual forever. The single image running through all of it. Vishnu is the light, self-luminous, inexhaustible, equally present to everything that exists. The soul is the mirror, real, individual, dependent, eternal, and uncreated, existing to receive and reflect that light. Avidya and karma are the dust. Sadhana is the cleaning. Taratanya is not the distribution of light, but the range of what each mirror, by its own inherent nature, was made to hold. And the three eternal categories of souls are not 3 degrees of dust. They are 3 types of mirror entirely. The flat mirror, when cleaned, reflects faithfully, mukti yogya. The convex mirror, however clean, distorts, nitya samsaran. The concave mirror, however polished, inverts, tamo yogya. Sadhana removes what obscures. It cannot change what the soul fundamentally is. Now, what makes Dvaita genuinely irreplaceable? What no other Vedantic system provides? 3 things. Its rivals are forced to surrender all 3. First, your individuality is not a problem. In Dvaita, the fact that you are you, permanently, distinctively, irreducibly yourself, is not the thing that liberation dissolves. It is the thing that liberation fulfills. The self that arrives in Vaikuntha is the actual self that sought liberation, shaped and refined by an entire history of striving. There is no dissolution of the seeker into an awareness that was always already the goal. There is arrival. The seeker finds what they sought, and what they find is not the extinguishing of themselves, but the completion of themselves. Every other Vedantic school must, in the end, treat your individuality as a problem to be overcome. Dvaita alone insists it is a gift to be perfected. Second, the world's reality is the foundation of ethics. Because other souls are genuinely real and genuinely individual, your treatment of them carries genuine and permanent weight. Compassion is not a provisional practice to be set aside once higher understanding reveals that the other person was never real. It is a permanent moral demand rooted in the permanent reality of real persons. Justice is not a conventional arrangement among beings who are ultimately illusory. It is a response to a genuine moral structure built into a genuinely real world. Third, love for God is the eternal final state. Liberation in Dvaita is not a dissolution into silence, not the extinction of the seeking self in an object that was always itself, not the fading of devotion into a featureless awareness where devotion is no longer possible because there is no longer a devotee. It is a relationship, the most complete and perfect love between 2 genuinely distinct beings who know each other truly. The bhakta does not graduate beyond bhakti into something higher that leaves bhakti behind. Bhakti is the final state. The seeking ends not in the disappearance of the one who sought, but in the arrival of that one at the presence of the one sought. This is Dvaita's most irreplaceable claim. Love is not a provisional condition on the way to something beyond it. Love is the destination. That's the whole architecture, foundation to summit. What remains isn't another argument. It's a promise. Madhva's promise to the sincere seeker is both more modest and more profound than it might initially appear. He does not promise that spiritual practice will make you feel good, that it will solve your worldly problems, that it will make your life comfortable. He promises something much more important, that if you genuinely understand Vishnu's nature and your own, if you practice genuine devotion grounded in genuine understanding, if you approach Vishnu with the honesty and the humility that his absolute supremacy demands, then Vishnu, who knows every soul completely, who loves his devotees with a love that is itself the highest reality, and who withholds his grace from no soul whose nature is capable of receiving it, will in his own time, in his own way, complete what your devotion has begun. The door to Vaikuntha is real. The path to it is real. And the being who opens that door is the most real, i.e. the supreme of all. One closing note. The purpose of this video was to clear away common misunderstandings and awaken genuine curiosity about Madhva's philosophy, not to substitute for serious study. In service of that purpose, some intricate details have been simplified. If what you've heard here has moved you, seek out a qualified scholar of the tradition and go deeper.